Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving deep today into a bunch of excerpts about charisma
Mm.
and confidence and all the tricky conversations we all face. It's kind of like a cheat sheet for becoming the most magnetic you.
I thought it was really cool how the book kind of brings together that old school wisdom with some cutting edge research and gives you stuff you can use right away.
Okay, so first impressions. The book kicks off talking about how fast those judgments are
Hmm.
and how crazy long they can last. They even bring up this economist, John Kenneth Galbraith, who said people would rather just stick with what they already believe
Mm.
than actually change their
That's
minds.
super important for first impressions. Like once someone have an idea about you, everything you do after that gets kind of filtered through that.
So not just making a good first impression, it's got to be the right impression. The book talks about these rising stars at a big accounting firm, all these top performers. But get this, people didn't even like them.
And the reason is kind of surprising. It was their job to come in when things went wrong, point out mistakes and all that. So they ended up associated with negativity, even though they were the ones fixing things.
Like they were walking bad news. So
Mhm.
how do we make sure we're making the right kind of first impression? The book brings up this tribal wear idea.
Yeah. It's not just clothes, though. It's more like adapting how you look and act to match the place you're in. So you're signaling you get it. Like those IBM guys back in the day telling their salespeople, navy blue suit or bust. It was all about fitting in.
But what about if it's not that corporate world, like a startup or something?
Exactly. American Express is a good example. They actually saw way more sales when their teams dressed like college students on campuses. And they even started hiring students to connect better. It's all about that, like speaking the right language, whether it's suits or hoodies.
It's like you're showing them, I get you. Reminds me of that study where people were more likely to help someone if they were wearing a similar shirt. Instant connection. But speaking of nonverbal stuff, the book dives into something I never thought was so important. The handshake.
It's crazy how much a handshake matters. Some experts even say it's more important than personality traits. When you're making a first impression, it's like this super old ritual.
Seriously, a handshake. That's kind of basic in today's world, right? It's not like we're checking for hidden weapons anymore.
Well, funny enough, that's exactly where it started. The book traces it way back to medieval times, making sure the other guy doesn't have a sword up his sleeve. But it changed over time into a social thing, a way to show trust.
So it's this ancient thing that's taken on this whole new meaning. But what makes a good handshake? Is there like a right way to do it?
Absolutely. It's about finding the right balance. A good grip, not too hard, but strong and warm. They describe some of the worst ones in the book, like that dead fish handshake. You can probably guess what that's like. And then there's the knuckle cruncher. Yokes.
Okay, got to work on my handshake. But after that first impression, what's next? How do you really build those charismatic connections?
It's all about active listening. That's key, especially for what they call focus charisma. You have to be in the moment, really engaged with what the other person is saying, making them feel like they're the only person in the room.
I think most people think listening is passive, right? You just sit there.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's way more active than that.
Oh, yeah. It's way more than just waiting till it's your turn to talk. It's like you're not just hearing their words, you're absorbing them, connecting with them, feeling them almost.
So be there in the moment.
Yeah.
No checking your phone, no matter how tempting.
Right. It's like showing them you're the only thing that matters right now. And it's not just words, it's your whole vibe. Eye contact, posture, even little nods. You got to show them you're paying attention.
Like you're creating this feedback loop where they feel truly seen. So how do we take listening to the next level?
The book says, let people interrupt you and then bring the conversation back to them. Sounds kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that rude?
It does, but it shows them you're prioritizing them. It's like putting their thoughts and feelings above your own. There's a story about a young executive who got job offers all the time because he let the interviewer talk most of the time.
Wow. So by making the other person feel heard, he actually made himself stand out. So charisma isn't about being the loudest in the room. It's about letting other people shine.
Exactly. And that leads us to emotional contagion, which means that the way you're feeling can actually affect people around you. It's all tied to these things in our brains called mirror neurons. They basically copy the stuff we see other people doing and feeling.
Now that's interesting. So if I'm feeling confident and positive, people around me will start to feel that way too.
That's the idea. They tell a story about this guy, Darius, who was trying to land a big deal for his company. He was meeting with this executive who was, notoriously tough. So Darius decided to try this mirroring technique.
Okay, I got to hear this. What did he do? Like copy everything the executive did.
It was more subtle than that. He mirrored the executive's body language, like his posture, his gestures, even how fast he talked. And guess what? The executive totally warmed up to him.
So he was using mirroring to create this connection. But how do you go from just mirroring to actually influencing someone?
That's where the mirror then lead thing comes in. You match them at first to create that comfort, and then you slowly shift your own body language to lead them towards more confident, positive vibes.
So you're guiding them toward a better mood without them even knowing it. Pretty clever. But what about people who aren't naturally like warm and fuzzy? Can anyone really learn to project that kind of warmth?
That's a great question. And the book says, yes, anyone can learn to express warmth better, even if it's not your default setting.
So it's not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about getting better at showing certain qualities that might not come naturally.
Exactly. And it starts with understanding how personal space can affect connections. Did you know that sitting next to someone instead of across from them can make them feel more comfortable and trusting?
Really?
Huh.
I always thought those like power tables where everyone sits opposite each other were like the thing to do.
Yeah.
But I guess it makes sense. You're breaking down those barriers.
It's about creating shared space,
Yeah.
shared experience. And get this, they have this visualization technique. Ready for it. They say to picture the person you're talking to with angel wings.
Angel wings. Now that's different. Okay, I'm listening. How does picturing someone with angel wings actually make you feel warmer towards them?
Might sound weird, but it's powerful. It's like that image just makes you feel more goodwill. Even for a split second, it changes how you see them.
So it's like you're hacking your brain to see the good in them, which then changes how you treat them. Interesting. But what about confidence? Can you really learn that, or are some people just born with it?
The book says it all starts with being the big gorilla, which I know sounds kind of intense.
I'm picturing someone like chest pounding and taking over the room.
It's not quite that literal, but it is about owning your space, projecting that presence. There's a story about this girl, Ella, who had to walk through a crowded campus without moving for anyone. She had to be the one claiming the space.
Wow, that sounds tough, especially if you're shy. Did she actually do it?
She did. It wasn't easy. But by picturing herself as this big gorilla, she changed how she walked, her posture, even her face. And people actually moved out of her way.
So just by embodying that confidence, she changed how people saw her and how they reacted to her. That's powerful stuff.
It is, and it's all about that energy you project.
But isn't there a risk that, like, being the big gorilla could make you seem arrogant?
That's a good point. And the book does say you got to adapt this to different situations. It's not about being a bully, it's about owning your presence in a way that feels right.
So it's finding that balance between being assertive and respectful. Sounds tricky.
It is a bit of a dance. And that's where visualization comes in. The book gets into the science behind it and how it can actually change your body.
Wait, are you saying just thinking about something can actually change you physically?
Sounds crazy, but it's true. Studies show that when you visualize something, your brain acts like you're actually doing it.
So if I imagine giving an amazing presentation, my brain thinks it's really happening.
Exactly. Athletes do this all the time to get better. It's like mental practice.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But how does this work with charisma? Can you just visualize yourself as more charismatic?
It's called rewriting reality. You choose to see things in a positive way, creating your own highlight reel of success. They even have stories about how this technique can help you beat nervousness and reach goals that seemed impossible.
So you're training your brain to focus on the good stuff. See possibilities instead of problems.
Exactly. And it's not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about making a conscious choice to focus on what empowers you.
So like choosing to see the glass half full, even when things are rough.
Exactly. And the book actually gives you a step-by-step guide with real-life examples and exercises to help you master this.
That's awesome. It's like we're getting the tools to rewire our brains for success.
Exactly. And it's not just about achieving stuff, it's about building a stronger mindset, which then affects how you interact with the world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. First impressions, active listening, that crazy emotional contagion thing, and even rewriting reality. What stood out to you as the most powerful takeaway?
For me, it's that charisma isn't something you're born with. It's a skill. Anyone can learn it.
Totally agree. Like, we're being given permission to become the most charismatic versions of ourselves.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it gets.
So it's not about being fake. It's about unlocking your true potential. I love that.
Me too. And you know what's really exciting?
Yeah.
We're just getting started.
I'm ready for more. Bring it on.
It's interesting how they connect visualization to everyday stuff too. Like it's not just about picturing big wins, it's about how we see those like little everyday things, especially when they don't go right.
Oh, like when you pour your heart into a project and then you
Yeah.
get feedback that's kind of, that can be a total bummer.
Yeah, they use this example about a designer, Mary. She's leading this huge project and her contact loves it, calls her a rock star even. But then the client's boss, not so much. Classic mixed bag.
Ouch, I feel that. You're riding high and then bam, one negative comment just throws you off.
And that's where the negativity bias comes in. Our brains are wired to zero in on those threats, you know?
Mm.
So Mary starts dwelling on that one not so great comment, even though her contact's thrilled.
Like that one bad comment outweighs all the good ones. It's so easy to focus on what we messed up, even if it's tiny. But how does this tie back to charisma?
Well, the book says this negativity bias can really mess with your charisma. If you're all doom and gloom, it's going to show in your body language, your voice, your whole energy.
Totally. It's hard to come across as confident and warm when you're feeling blah. It's like that negative energy becomes a wall pushing people away. So how do we escape that negativity trap?
They have some cool techniques. One is to actually face your worst fear head on. Like ask yourself, what's the absolute worst that could happen? And then realize that even if it does happen, you'll be okay.
Sometimes we get carried away with those what-if scenarios, but usually our fears are way worse than the reality.
Exactly. It's all about perspective. Another one is to remember all those times you were sure you wouldn't survive something, but you did. We're way tougher than we think.
I love that. Remembering our strength. We've been through tough stuff before and we made it. But what about Mary in that situation? How could she use these techniques?
Instead of fixating on that one lukewarm comment, she could focus on the overwhelmingly positive response from her contact. She could remind herself, this person is on my side. Their opinion probably matters more anyway.
That's reframing it. Not a setback, but a chance to win over a tough crowd.
Right. Turning it into an opportunity. And the book says to get creative. Maybe that delay that's making you late. Maybe it saved you from a car accident or gave your client time to get ready.
Okay, I'm seeing how this rewriting reality works. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about choosing to see the part that helps you move forward.
You got it. And there's science behind it. Our brains can actually change based on our experiences and thoughts.
Neuroplasticity, right?
Ah.
We're literally reshaping our brains.
Mhm.
So by doing visualizations and all that positive self-talk, we're basically training our brains to be more confident and charismatic.
Exactly. Creating those neural pathways for success.
I love that. Paving the way for charisma. So we've got the confidence part. But what about warmth? We talked about those angel wings, but is there anything else? Especially if you're not naturally that, like, warm and fuzzy type.
The book says warmth isn't everyone's default, and that's okay. Some people are more reserved, but they can learn to express it better.
I think a lot of people worry about seeming fake if they try too hard.
It's definitely about finding that balance. Being genuine, but pushing yourself a little. It's not about a mask. It's about finding those real feelings of care and connection we all have, even if they're hidden.
So how do we dig those up?
Gratitude's huge. The book actually suggests picturing your own funeral.
Whoa, okay, that got dark fast. Not exactly what I was expecting.
I know, right? But it's about putting things in perspective, stepping outside those everyday worries,
Yeah.
and realizing how much you have.
Okay, I get that that would bring up some strong feelings.
Mm.
But how does that translate to being warmer to others?
It shifts your focus from yourself to the people around you. When you feel grateful for them, it just radiates out, makes you softer, you know? Connects you on a deeper level.
Okay, I can see that. But what about when you're not ready for that whole mortality thing? Any other ways to tap into that warmth?
They talk about goodwill, genuinely wanting the best for others, celebrating their wins as your own.
Like when a friend achieves something big, you're genuinely happy for them.
Exactly. And remember the angel wing trick. Use that to create goodwill too.
Back to the angel wings. It's a little out there, but there's something about that image.
Like you're telling your brain to see the good in someone, which then changes how you interact with them.
A charisma hack for those tough people.
Exactly. And speaking of tough, they talk about self-compassion, which ironically can be the hardest kind to have.
Oh, so true. We're way harder on ourselves than we would ever be on anyone else.
Right. And the book makes a great point. Self-criticism kills charisma. If you're always putting yourself down, it shows.
Like it becomes this barrier to connecting with others.
Exactly. So they suggest this Buddhist practice called metta. It's all about developing loving kindness for yourself first and then for others.
Okay, I'm all for loving kindness. What's this meta thing all about? Lots of chanting and stuff.
It can involve those things,
Yeah.
but the basic idea is simple. Visualize yourself in this warm light, and then you expand that light to include others.
Cultivating that connection, that compassion.
Yep. And the book says this can really boost your charisma because when you're kind to yourself, it shines through, makes you connect better, project that warmth.
It's true. You can't give what you don't have.
Mhm.
If you want to be loving and compassionate to others, you got to start with yourself.
Exactly. And it's not about being selfish or ignoring your flaws. It's about treating yourself like you'd treat a good friend.
That's an important point. Being supportive, not critical.
Right. And the book has some great tips for making this happen. One is to list 5 ways you already care for yourself, like a hot bath, a good book, time in nature.
Recognizing those little things we do for ourselves.
Yep. And then build on that. Make it a regular thing.
Okay, so we've got confidence, warmth, self-compassion. It's cool how it all connects. It's not just about what you show people. It's about who you are on the inside.
It is all connected. And the book keeps saying charisma isn't set in stone. It's a skill. You can work on it.
I agree. That's so encouraging. But let's talk about something we touched on earlier. Body language. How can that help or hurt our charisma?
Well, they start by saying that nonverbal stuff speaks directly to our emotions. It bypasses all that logical thinking. It hits you in the gut.
It's like when you just feel someone's energy, you can tell if they're confident or warm or even what their intentions are without them saying a word.
Exactly. And the book's big point is that your body language can either match your words or totally contradict them.
Yeah.
If they're in sync, it's way more powerful and convincing.
Like when someone says they're excited but their voice is flat and they're slouching, you're like, yeah, right.
Exactly. But when everything matches, their words, tone, face, gestures, it creates this aura. You can't fake it.
So being aware of those nonverbal cues,
Yeah.
making sure they're backing up what you're saying. But how much control do we really have over that? I mean, some of it's just instinct, right?
Some of it is, but the book gets into how emotional contagion works. Remember how we talked about emotions spreading?
Oh, yeah. That was fascinating. Like our emotions are literally contagious.
Right. And it's because of those mirror neurons. They fire when we do something, and when we see someone else doing it.
So we're wired to feel what others are feeling.
That's the idea. And for charisma, it means the way we feel can actually change how others feel.
Wow. So if I'm confident and warm, the people around me will actually start to feel that way too. Pretty cool.
It is. They talk about this study where people watched videos of actors giving performance reviews, some good, some bad. But sometimes their body language didn't match what they were saying.
Okay, what happened? Did people notice?
They did. What the actors did with their bodies actually influenced the viewers more than their actual words. So even if the review was positive, if the actor looked negative, it came across as more negative overall.
That's wild. Our brains trust those nonverbal cues more than words. But if that's true, should we always try to mirror the other person?
That's a good point. The book says mirroring can build rapport, but there are times it's not the right move.
Like when?
If they're showing negative vibes like anger, mirroring, that could actually make things worse.
Adding fuel to the fire.
Exactly. In those cases, try breaking their posture. Hand them something, anything to make them shift.
That's clever, subtly changing the energy. But then once they've shifted, you can mirror their new, more relaxed position, right?
You got it. Mirroring is strategic. It's about connection, not conflict.
Makes sense. And the book talks about personal space too, which we don't usually think about until someone gets too close.
We all have that bubble, and when someone pops it, you feel it. They actually have this experiment where the author tries to override that instinct by standing uncomfortably close to someone on a subway.
Okay, I gotta know what happened. Did he make it work?
He tried, but his body said, nope. He instinctively leaned away.
Personal space is a real thing, so be mindful of it, especially if you want people to feel at ease.
Right. And the book says to pay attention to seating arrangements. Don't put someone with their back to a wide open space. Makes them feel vulnerable.
Makes sense. Our brains are always looking for danger, even if we don't realize it.
You
So
also
create a space that feels safe.
Exactly. And it's not just the physical space. Think about the difference between a cozy coffee shop and a sterile office.
Yeah, the atmosphere totally affects the conversation.
Right, you pick up on that energy. So choose spaces that promote good vibes.
There's so much that goes into making interactions work. It's not just words. It's how we say them, where, body language, even the environment.
And they keep saying it's not about being fake. It's about understanding people and using that knowledge to connect better.
It's like a superpower, creating a better world one conversation at a time. But let's talk about eye contact. It's powerful, but how do we do it right?
Ah, eye contact. It's a balancing act. Too little, and you seem shady. Too much, and you're a creep.
Finding that sweet spot. But how much is too much?
There's no exact rule, but they say aim for 3 to 5 seconds, then break contact. Connects you, but doesn't feel like staring.
Okay, I can try that. But what about making your gaze more inviting?
Soften your gaze. Relax those eye muscles. Avoid that laser focus.
More of a gentle, welcoming look.
Exactly. And the book says this is especially important for women. A soft gaze is warm and approachable, whereas an intense stare can come across as too masculine.
Interesting. Even small differences change the message. It's like we're communicating on a whole other level.
We are. And the book says to be aware of those cues and adjust. But what about when you're going for confidence? Shouldn't you use more direct eye contact then? Direct eye contact is good for confidence, but you need warmth too.
So, power and approachability. Like, you're in charge, but not a threat.
Right. Charismatic leaders are good at switching it up depending on the situation. Like they're fluent in eye contact.
Eye contact masters. But let's go back to being the big gorilla. We talked about taking up space, but any specific techniques?
One of the simplest. Stand tall and puff out your chest.
Good old posture. My mom always said to stand up straight.
She was right. It sends a signal to yourself and others, like you're literally taking up more space.
Claiming your space, your right to be there. But does it actually change anything inside? Or is it just about how it looks?
There's actually science behind it. Changing your posture can actually change your hormones. They did this study where people held either power poses or closed-off poses, and then they measured their hormones.
Okay, I'm curious. What do they find?
Those who held power poses, like standing tall with arms out, had way more testosterone, the dominance hormone.
Wow, so just standing differently can actually change your body chemistry.
It's not just in your head. Your body and mind are linked in crazy ways.
Tapping into your own power source.
Ah.
So, stand tall, chest out. Got it. I'm trying it right now. Go for it. The book also says to slow down your movements and stop fidgeting.
Projecting that calm, in-control vibe.
Yep. When you move with intention, it shows power. But fidgeting? That just screams anxiety.
It's like the difference between a steady captain and one who's freaking out.
Exactly. And they also talk about vocal power, something we often forget about.
Oh, for sure. We focus on what to say, not how to say it. So how can we project confidence with our voices?
Slow down. Just like your movements, speaking slowly shows you're in control. Your words have more impact.
No more speed talking then.
Right. And use pauses between sentences, even in the middle of a sentence. It might feel weird, but it shows confidence.
Like you're trusting people to wait for you. That your words matter. Exactly. It's about mastering the pause. And the book has exercises to help with that.
Nice. Tuning up our vocal instruments. What about tone of voice? Does that matter too?
Absolutely. They talk about intonation, the rise and fall of your voice. A lower intonation at the end of a sentence is more authoritative. Going up, like when you ask a question, can make you sound less sure of yourself.
So end your statements with a sense of finality.
Exactly. And they even say to lower your intonation mid-sentence sometimes, to be even more confident.
Okay, that sounds tricky, but I can see how it would work.
It takes practice, but they say it can become second nature.
This is so cool. It's like unlocking a whole new level of communication. But what about when you want to project confidence? Shouldn't you try to make your voice deeper, like those CEO types?
That's a good thought. A deep voice can definitely project authority, but the book says it's not about forcing it. It's about finding your own natural power. That's what's truly charismatic.
So be yourself, but be the best version of yourself.
Exactly. And there are ways to make your voice stronger. Breathing exercises, warm-ups.
Treating your voice like an instrument.
And like any instrument, it takes practice. But you can develop that charismatic voice.
This is all so empowering, like we're learning to transform ourselves. But let's switch gears and talk about those difficult conversations, the ones that just drain you, whether it's a tough boss, a coworker, or even a family member.
Those are rough. And the book doesn't shy away from them. They say it's important to approach each one differently, not a one-size-fits-all approach.
So adjusting your style to the person and the situation.
Yep. Their personality, their mood, even their cultural background matters. What works for one person might not work for another.
It's like speaking different languages. You wouldn't talk to your boss the same way you talk to your best friend.
Right. And the book talks about how you can influence how others see you, even in tough situations.
Okay, how do you do that? Especially if they already have a bad opinion of you.
They talk about rationalization. When you do someone a favor, they're more likely to think of reasons why they like you, even if they didn't before.
So you're tricking them into liking you by being nice.
Maybe. They tell this story about Benjamin Franklin, who was amazing at persuasion. He would actually ask his opponents for favors.
Seriously. That's the opposite of what I would do.
I know, right? But he realized that by asking for a favor, he was forcing them to come up with a reason why they were helping him.
And that reason had to be something positive, right? Like, well, I guess I must kind of like this guy. That's so clever.
It's a subtle but powerful trick. They also talk about making people feel right, even when they're not.
Okay, that sounds tough. How do you do that?
It's not about agreeing with them, it's about acknowledging their perspective and feelings. If you make someone feel wrong, they get defensive, which makes it harder to talk.
So skip the "I told you so."
Right. Focus on understanding them, even if you disagree.
Active listening. Empathy.
Exactly. Separating the person from the action.
Like saying, I get why you did that, even though I don't think it was the right choice.
Exactly. It can really disarm someone, especially when things are heated.
Okay, so we've got rationalization, making people feel right, and empathy. But what about actual tips for these conversations? How do we make them less stressful and more connected?
The book says to pay attention to timing and location. Talk when the other person is most likely to be open to it, somewhere comfortable and private.
So maybe don't have that tough talk with your boss at the end of a crazy day.
Probably not. Set yourself up for success.
And I bet your own mood matters too.
Absolutely. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? You got to be in a good place yourself to have a productive talk.
So prepare yourself for the conversation, like you would for a big presentation.
Exactly. Use those charisma tools we talked about. Visualization, self-compassion, to get centered.
So we can use those tools to be better communicators, even in tough situations.
Totally. And they also talk about body language again. Use warmth and empathy to create that safe feeling.
So no crossed arms, eye rolls, or foot tapping.
Those can definitely send the wrong message. They signal judgment, which makes people feel attacked.
So even when you're delivering bad news, create a space where they feel safe.
Right. And the book gives specific tips. Uncross your arms and legs, lean forward a little, make gentle eye contact.
Showing openness.
Exactly. It makes a big difference.
This is awesome. I'm really seeing how much body language matters. But what about when you're the one giving the bad news or criticism? How do you do it in a way that's honest but not hurtful?
That's tough, and the book has a whole section on it. They start by saying that it's never easy, but you can minimize the damage.
Okay, how do you give tough feedback without crushing someone?
Warmth and empathy are key, even when the news is bad.
So you show that you care, even if you're not happy with what they did.
Exactly. Use kind words and body language. Don't be harsh or judgmental. Help them hear it and learn from it.
So no harsh tones or pointing fingers.
Definitely not. Focus on specific things they did, not on judging them as a person.
So instead of "you're always disorganized," it's "I noticed the report wasn't in on time."
Right. That way it's easier for them to accept it. It's not a personal attack.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's helpful, not hurtful. But what about when you give the feedback?
The sooner the better. While it's fresh in everyone's mind,
But what if it's not a good time?
you got to use your judgment. If it's small, let it go. If it's important, find a private time.
Balance the urgency with the potential for disruption.
Exactly. And even when you're giving criticism, end on a positive note.
Point out something they did well. Show confidence that they can improve.
Exactly. It helps them feel motivated, not defeated. It's about giving them that hope that things can get better, not making them feel like they failed.
So it's not just pointing at the bad stuff. It's also about recognizing their good qualities and their potential.
Exactly. And that same idea applies to apologizing, which can be really tough for some people.
Oh yeah. Admitting we messed up isn't easy, especially if we're used to, like, being in charge or being right all the time.
It's true. But the book says apologizing is so important for relationships. In your personal life and at work, it actually shows strength, not weakness.
So taking responsibility, even when it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. And they give some good advice on how to apologize in a way that actually helps the relationship, not hurts it more.
Okay, tell me more. Is there, like, a perfect apology formula?
No magic formula, but there are some key things. First, be present. Really listen when someone's telling you how you hurt them. Don't get defensive.
So put your guard down and really hear them, even if you don't see it their way.
Exactly. Make eye contact, nod, repeat back what they're saying, those active listening things.
Like you're saying, I hear you. Your feelings are real to me, even if you didn't mean to cause them pain.
Right. That makes them feel validated and understood.
Like you're creating a safe space for them, to be honest.
Exactly. And once you've really listened, give a sincere apology. Keep it simple.
So something like, I'm really sorry I didn't mean to hurt you.
Exactly. The words aren't as important as meaning it.
But sometimes I'm sorry just doesn't feel like enough.
It's true. Go a step further. Acknowledge how your actions affected them.
Like, I understand that what I did made you feel disrespected, and I'm truly sorry for that.
Exactly. Own the impact, not just the action. And be specific about how you'll avoid doing it again.
So you're not just saying it, you're showing them you mean it.
Right. And even though these conversations are hard, they're so important for building strong, real relationships.
They are. Like they say, the truth will set you free, even if it stings a little at first.
And the book says to look at these tough conversations as chances to grow closer.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
A whole new way to look at those tricky situations. But what about when you can't talk face to face, like on the phone or email? Can you still have that charisma?
That's a great question. The book has a whole chapter on that. They say even though the way you're communicating is different, the same ideas still apply.
So still got to think about tone, language, even your like virtual body language.
Exactly. Use everything we've talked about, visualization, warmth, power, to create that presence even when you're not there in person.
And no more angry emails in all caps.
Probably a good idea. They say to really think about what you're writing or saying, even if it's just a quick call or email.
Being intentional like you would in person.
Exactly. And they have some good tips for charisma on the phone. Be present, like you would if you were sitting across from them.
No multitasking while you chat then.
Right. Focus on the person. Use those active listening skills.
Showing them they have your full attention, even through the phone.
Exactly. And pay attention to your tone. They even say to smile while you're talking. Makes you sound friendlier.
Really, smiling actually changes how your voice sounds.
It does. Even over the phone, those subtle cues get through. And they have this cool trick for making people feel special on the phone. Answer professionally, but once you know who it is, let your warmth come through.
I like that. It's like you're excited they called.
Exactly. And for emails, they say keep it short and sweet. Clear sentences. No jargon. Get to the point.
Respecting people's time. No one wants to read a novel in their inbox.
Right. Use bullet points, headings, and visuals like pictures or charts if you can.
Engaging them.
Yeah.
Make it easy to understand.
Exactly. And I love this. They say even though emails are formal, you can still let your personality show.
So maybe an emoji here and there.
Exactly. Make it memorable, even if it's a short message.
Wow. This has been an amazing deep dive. We've learned so much about how to communicate with charisma. I'm ready to try all this stuff out.
Me too. And remember, it's not about pretending. It's about being your best self.
I love that. It's about connecting with people in a real, genuine way.
Exactly. And charisma is a journey. It's something we can keep working on our whole lives.
This has really shown me that charisma isn't some magical gift. It's something we can learn and get better at.
Totally agree. It's pretty amazing.
And the more we practice, the easier it gets, right? Like
Yeah.
we're actually rewiring our brains to be more charismatic.
Exactly. And the best part, charisma is contagious. So when we work on ourselves, we inspire others to do the same. It's like a ripple effect of good vibes.
I love that. Let's go out there and be the change, one conversation at a time.
I'm in. This has been such a cool exploration of charisma. I hope you're feeling inspired too.
If charisma can be learned, what one small change would you try this week? And how will you know if it worked?
Until next time, keep those charismatic vibes going.